are 12 comics to get your friend, family member, or maybe even yourself. Let's jump right into it. First up, I'm going to talk about In Real Life. This is not a comic series, it's a singular graphic novel, but I got it for Christmas a couple years ago and I really enjoyed it. We follow its protagonist, Anda, as she juggles being in high school with having an online social life through a video game, MMORPG. But the crux of the story is the difficulties that people can face online, how it translates to the real world, and vice versa, and how the internet can be such an amazing place for people who don't really feel like they have a place to belong to in the more physical side of the world these days. I think it's a really sweet and well-told story, and it makes a great gift for someone in high school who's just getting into graphic novels. Next up, another family-friendly story that I read back in my graphic novel days is Bad Island. This could honestly be a fun thing to get if you were going to be reading a graphic novel with your family or something along those lines, but I just read it to myself and I still really enjoyed it. It follows Reese's family as they decide to go on a last-minute vacation, but end up getting stranded on a very bad island and the strange adventures that follow. It explores the bonds that tie family together as well as the problems that families may have with each other, but of course at the heart of it is the strength to overcome those problems and work together. Does anybody else know that feeling when you're grabbing the comic book you're going to be talking about next and you realize that you accidentally grabbed the last book in the series? Well, that's what I did here. So this is not the cover of the first one, but it is still Zita the Space Girl, which is my third graphic novel recommendation. This is a series of 3 graphic novels, whereas the first 2 I talked about were just singular graphic novels. I think that this story is really cute and it's appropriate for pretty much all ages. We follow the protagonist Zita as she discovers a mysterious device with her best friend and is transported into an intergalactic new world. She then has to find this friend and lots of things go on from there. I was entertained throughout all 3 books and really enjoyed the series. It was also one of the earliest graphic novels that I read, more when I was like 10, 12, so it's definitely kid-friendly. Next, I wanted to mention Heartstopper in the vein of heartwarming stories. I did not actually have a hardcover of this, I read it in webcomic format, but you can buy the graphic novels now. It's a wonderfully heartwarming story that I absolutely adore, and I believe it's still ongoing. Part of what is wonderful about Heartstopper is the way that you get to go along and feel like you're discovering the story with these protagonists. So I'll just say that boy meets boy, and it's a truly wonderful story, especially for LGBTQIA+ readers. It's just a great way to see more of an upbeat story about queer experiences. Next, I wanted to talk about Nimona, another amazing graphic novel. I love this book to bits, but no spoilers for the movie because I haven't seen that yet. I'll just read you the back because it sums up the vibe really well. Nimona is an impulsive young shapeshifter with a knack for villainy. Lord Ballister Blackheart is a villain with a vendetta. As sidekick and supervillain, Nimona and Lord Blackheart are about to wreak some serious havoc. Their mission? Prove to the kingdom that Sir Ambrosius Goldenloin and his buddies at the Institution of Law Enforcement and Heroics aren't the heroes everyone thinks they are. Nemesises, dragons, science, symbolism, all of these and more await in this brilliantly submersive, sharply irreverent epic. It's so good. This was one of those graphic novels that changed the way I view storytelling. It's a sci-fi fantasy story set in a pretty classically medieval setting, and like it said, it follows the villains as they try and prove that the heroes aren't quite as heroic as they seem. I love so many things about this story. I can't say more without giving it away, but you gotta read this book. You gotta buy this book for everybody you know. It's really, really, really good. Continuing along with graphic novels is Amulet. This is the first graphic novel that I ever actually really read, and I think that it's just amazing. After a family tragedy, Emily, Navin, and their mother moved to an ancestral home to start a new life. On the family's very first night in the mysterious house, Em and Navin's mom is kidnapped by a tentacled creature. Now it's up to Em and Navin to figure out how to set things right and save their mother's life. Surprising no one, based on the cover, this is a fantasy story, although I'd say in the later issues it is very much also a science fiction story. Honestly, probably from the start it's a bit of both. It follows Em and Navin as they travel into a mysterious new world in an attempt to save their mother grandfather who has been kidnapped by a terrible tentacled creature. It catalogs a family history that they didn't know about, and I just love the world building and the magic and the characters that you get to meet along the way, and the way that all of this really connects and comes back to that amulet. It's amazing, and honestly, you could just read it for its magic system, but there's so many amazing things about this series. We are now into the slightly less family-friendly zone, and we're going to be talking about Giant Days. I definitely suggest this for teen and up, as it has some more mature themes at times. They are college girls after all, but it follows Susan, Esther, and Daisy started at university 3 weeks ago and became fast friends. Now, away from home for the first time, all three want to reinvent themselves. When in the face of hand-wringing boys, personal experimentation, influenza, mystery mold, new chauvinism, I probably pronounced that wrong, and the willful, unwanted intrusion of academia, they may be lucky just to make it to spring alive. Going off to university is always a time of change and growth, but for Esther, Susan, and Daisy, things are about to get a little weird. And a little weird things do become. It's a very funny story, the characters are well done, and it's just sort of become my happy place comic. Whenever I'm in a bad mood or I need to be cheered up, I'll just pick up Giant Days and I'm instantly in a better mood. I think that Giant Days makes a wonderful present because of the fact that it's just like such a cheerful and upbeat and fun read. Now next, if you know a friend who's a science fiction or maybe a Star Wars friend, don't we wish we all had Star Wars friends? Can I hang out with Chewie for Christmas? Star Wars fan. I would suggest Invisible Kingdom. It very much has a Star Wars-y sort of science fiction fantasy feel to me. It includes space nuns, smugglers, starships, runner sort of characters, and the art style is amazing. I mean, just from the cover, you can tell it's going to be a beautiful comic book. Follow the Prophet or the Prophet. In a distant galaxy, two women discover an inconceivable conspiracy between the world's most dominant religion and an all-powerful megacorporation. Suddenly, the prey in a desperate interstellar chase, they're faced with a life or death decision. Reveal the truth or risk plunging their worlds into anarchy. I really enjoyed reading this. Like I said, the art style is amazing. Another LGBTQIA plus friendly read. Characters are great. I feel like it's definitely a very character-driven storyline, which are always personally my favorites. And like I said, very Star Wars reminiscent sort of world in my opinion. A little bit Guardians of the Galaxy-esque too. That just means it's science fiction. It's a science fiction book. Now, if your friend is really into Star Wars, you may want to get them some Star Wars comics. Now, I know everyone's probably sighing because not everyone wants to read Star Wars comics, but I'll keep this brief and only have two on my list. First is Darth Vader. Not to be confused with Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. This is the Darth Vader comics by Gillen, LaRocca, and Delgado. If I'm pronouncing any of your names wrong, I'm very sorry. You wrote an amazing book. This was the Star Wars comic that got me into Star Wars comics. Now, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. If you've been around here, you've probably heard me mention that before. The original trilogy set Darth Vader up for an amazing comic series. Like, this is so good. Fresh from defeat at the hands of the Rebel Alliance, Darth Vader must rise again to reassert the Empire's iron grip on the galaxy. But his failure leaves him out of favor with the Emperor, and facing an uncertain future and his own personal desire to find the force-strong young pilot who destroyed the Death Star, conflict with his duty. As his fateful quest begins, can the Dark Lord of the Sith pursue his own agenda and secure his seat of power in the face of all new threats to his position? Perhaps with the aid of a few rogues from a galaxy of scum and villainy, from familiar faces like Jabba the Hutt, Boba Fett, and Boss, to diabolical debutantes Dr. Aphra and the killer droids 000 and BT-1, filled with fear, anger, hate, and suffering. This is the dark side of Star Wars as you've never seen it before. So good. And if you know someone who's already read this and they loved it, I have a recommendation for that too. Dr. Aphra. This comic changed the way I think about comics. There have been a couple series that have done that for me that are just so special that they made me become a better writer just by thinking about the things that they were able to do. Dr. Aphra manages to be both hilariously over the top and heart-wrenchingly introspective at the same time. It's so well written. It does take place after the events of those Darth Vader comics, so if your friend has never read them, they may be a little bit in the dark, especially because Dr. Aphra is introduced in those comics. So if you want them to become an Aphra fan, get them those Darth Vader comics, then get them these. If they're already a Dr. Aphra fan, get them these. Also an LGBTQIA+ friendly series. If you want some drama, if you want some romance, if you want even more drama with just a tinge of romance and also a lot of tension, read this book. Now, I know I've talked a lot about science fiction, and I like fantasy too, so if you're looking for a story with no laser guns, you should check out Seven to Eternity. The God of Whispers has spread an omnipresent paranoia to every corner of the land of Zal. His spies hide in every hall, spreading mistrust and fear. Adam Osiris, a dying knight from a disgraced house, must choose between joining a hopeless order of magical warriors and mercenaries in their desperate bid to free the world of the evil god, or accepting the god's promise to give Adam everything he's ever dreamed of. All men have surrendered their freedom for fear. Now one last free man must choose between the fate of the world and his own heart's desire. Another book that was just really well done. The world building is amazing. The magic system is super fascinating. And the characters are really complex, and you sort of hate them, but you can't help but love them. Also, the art is so complex. It's like masterful. Such a good read. And the ending is quite a surprise. So if you like an ending that you don't see coming, this is the book for you, or your friend, or your family member, whoever. I keep forgetting this is a gift guide. Next, Paper Girls. You may have seen the Amazon Prime show based on this comic, and if you have, please no spoilers, I haven't seen it yet. Right now I'm watching Formula One, okay? I'm busy. I have like 3 years of Drive to Survive to catch up on. In the early hours after Halloween of 1988, 4 12-year-old newspaper delivery girls uncover the most important story of all time. Suburban drama and supernatural mysteries collide in this smash hit series about nostalgia, first jobs, and the last days of childhood. I won't go into details because this is very much a story that is something you need to experience all of the twists and turns of, because you pretty much don't know what's happening or why until the very end. But I will say that if you like science fiction, 1980s nostalgia, you should check out this book. Last, but certainly not least, the book that changed my life, Saga. Again, this is not the first issue. I actually don't own the first issue in this format. I have like a big hardcover book. So this is actually volume 10. But you can look up Saga and they should show you the first issue. From the multiple Eisner Award-winning team of Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan, Saga is the sweeping tale of a girl named Hazel and her ever-evolving family. Honestly, it's really hard to find a good example, like a good explanation of what Saga is. I would just say it is the ultimate example of a character-driven story. Definitely for mature audiences. It's rated M for mature. It contains a lot of stuff. So before buying any of these comics for anybody, please just double check, look into them, make sure they don't have anything that might upset your specific person that you're going to be giving this gift to. Definitely look into if this is appropriate before buying this for anybody. It is another LGBTQIA+ storyline, as is Paper Girls, I forgot to mention that. Saga is really well written, and it follows Hazel, who occasionally narrates the series from the future, as she tells you all about her life from the day of her birth to who I don't know because it's not done being written yet. The issues are still coming out monthly, I believe. It's just a really well-written story. It's actually the comic book that made me want to become a writer. Now, I'm sure there's things that I forgot to say about all of these books, so if there's any of them that you have questions about, like specific questions, like if you want to be like, hey Ash, can you give me some more details on what Paper Girls is about? Then I can do my best to give you some pointers and more descriptions in the comments. I'd be happy to do that. I'm not the greatest at comic book reviews. I just try to do them once in a while because I feel like I have a lot of good comics around me and I'd love to share them with you. I just feel like I'm not great at talking about them. I think it's really hard for me to know how to talk about something without giving away spoilers. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have questions or if you need clarity on a specific book or something, let me know in the comments. I will fill you in. I will put the top 10 comic book video up on the screen for you to click on if you are interested, seeing as that goes into more details about a lot of these and also has other suggestions that you could potentially give as gifts. And if you're more of like a I want to write comic books sort of a person, check out the playlist that I'll put up on the screen because that's all about how to write comic books, which is what I do usually. But happy holidays, good luck shopping, and I will see you in the next video.